So maybe I could bring Vanessa Beeley onto the program. Welcome to the program, Vanessa. How's your funding from Russia going?
Oh, I wish. To be honest, any funding would be quite nice right now. But I mean, this is on a more serious note. I mean, this is insane. We're going so much deeper into the bunny hole than actually even I ever imagined. I mean, we're seeing now a call for Chinese media staff in the US to be designated foreign agents.
You've preempted me slightly. So let's just bring this on, because here we've got Heather Newert, who's from the State Department, saying we're concerned by the recent charges of treason filed against 8 Uganda journalists of a local tabloid newspaper. This is the bit, we continue to support freedom of expression and freedom of the press as central elements of US foreign policy. And yet, as you say, US Congress has now decided that not only the Russians, but the Chinese state media need to register as foreign agents. I mean, where does this end?
Well, it doesn't end. And I mean, and an interesting question to raise here is Israel not a foreign agent, or is that a little bit risque to say that? You know, is AIPAC not a foreign agent? Why are their media staff, which, let's face it, have infiltrated the majority of American media, why are they not being asked to declare themselves as foreign agents? So the target is basically nations who threaten US unipolarity. I mean, you know, it's so transparent. And actually, I just saw a comment on Twitter from Subrata Ghoshroy from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, saying that a few years ago, he remembers that in the United States during protests and demonstrations, people were actually put in cages as part of crowd control, but they were allowed to make their statements from within the cages. I mean, if we're talking restriction here, and if we're talking dictatorship and press predatory organizations, then we have to be looking at the United States right now.
Absolutely. Now, as UK column viewers and listeners will know, you were in Geneva day before yesterday, giving a presentation to the Geneva Press Club. Let's just have a quick look at that.
On their website, the White Helmets state clearly that they are a neutral, impartial, humanitarian NGO with no official affiliation to any political or military actor, and they have a commitment to render services to any in need, regardless of their sect or political affiliation. However, the White Helmets are embedded exclusively in areas of Syria occupied by listed terrorist organizations, which include Nusra Front and ISIS, along with various associated moderate rebels such as Ara al-Sham and Nour al-Zinki. But all these groups and subgroups are responsible for carrying out ethnic cleansing pogroms and documented atrocities against the Syrian people.
So that's just a short clip from the video, Vanessa. But a large part of the theme of this presentation was about funding. So, before we get onto that, what was the general response of the audience?
The general response of the audience was silence, which was quite extraordinary, because actually before the event started, quite rightly, Guy Metton, who's the president of the Geneva Press Club, had come under serious pressure, first of all, to cancel the event, but then also attacked for his perceived pro-Russian views, his support, obviously, of, in inverted commas, pro-Assadist, illegitimate journalists, is pretty much how we were described. And so at the beginning, what he actually insisted upon was cutting down the time that we were speaking in order to allow for the greatest number of questions. But it was quite extraordinary, because at the end of the 4 presentations, because Guy Metton actually made a statement himself to begin the event, there was a resounding silence from the members of press in the room. Now, it's hard to it's only speculation to say why that happened, but my feeling is that they simply didn't want to ask questions which would then expand upon the evidence against the White Helmets. So the decision had been taken to avoid asking or responding, let's say, to the evidence that was presented, and to either say nothing or to bring it back to an argument that continued with the NATO-aligned narrative, i.e., bring it back to the sort of default position of President Assad being the all-time villain in the Syrian crisis, etc. So it was very interesting, let's say, the lack of reaction, the lack of questioning. I mean, you would think this was a press event, so you would think it was the perfect opportunity for them to come. And if I am nothing more than a conspiracy theorist, which of course they are claiming, why did they not simply discredit me by questioning the evidence that had been presented?
Well, we'll come on to that in a second.
I just wanted to say, Vanessa, that organised silence, and the silence you described has clearly been organised. This is censorship. Now, either those reporters have decided that they are going to impose the censorship. So they've met over a couple of cups of coffee and a few cigarettes and said, we're going to deal with this Vanessa Beeley. Let's not ask her any questions. That's possible. Or else it's come directly from their news organisations, and journalists have actually been warned off asking questions. But it's censorship.
Yeah.
Well, look, just before we look a bit more at the reaction to what you did, let's just have a quick run through some of the evidence that you presented. We're starting off with the CSSF annual report. Who's the CSSF?
It's the Conflict Stability and Security Fund, which replaced what was called the conflict pool. So it's an over $1 billion a year fund that is contributed to by British or UK taxpayers, and it's run under a cloak of secrecy by Amber Rudd, who has been basically criticised for not making the fund much more transparent, i.e., it's very difficult to get information of who those funds are going to.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Vanessa, because I have been trying, as you know, for quite some time now to get the information about where Department for International Development and Foreign Office money is going to in Syria. And as you know, our new International Development Secretary of State, Ms. Penny Mordaunt, said a few days ago that we should trust that the money is going to the right places, that we can trust that it's going to the right places. She's going to be much more transparent about where the money's going to. So I wrote to her last week and asked, well, now that you've said that, surely you could now release the information that I've asked for. Well, she didn't reply to me. She passed it across to the public inquiry team, who replied to me by saying no. So basically, there's absolutely no transparency in this whatsoever.
No, none. Absolutely right. And you're not the only one to have asked similar questions through the Freedom of Information, and pretty much everyone has had the same answer, which is yes, we are funding the White Helmets, for example, but no, we're not going to give you any information on it. I mean, that's extraordinary.
So we've got a cycle here.
Yeah. So if you go from, as I said, the CSSF, the Conflict Stability and Security Fund, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Now, thanks to Khaled Escaif, the Syrian journalist who worked independently inside Aleppo to go through the remnants of the White Helmet centers, the East Aleppo councils, the Nusra Front centers, and the Free Syria police centers. If you remember, we did a program on them last year. He found 2 documents in Arabic headed with Adam Smith International and Integrity Global. When we investigated further and we translated those documents, we discovered that there is Foreign and Commonwealth Office funds and financing basically going through Adam Smith International Integrity Consulting to an outreach agent called Tamkeen, the Tamkeen project inside Syria. And Tamkeen is responsible for the establishment of local councils, i.e. shadow state constructs, in terrorist-held areas, in particular in East Aleppo and in Idlib. That East Aleppo, of course, was occupied by Nusra Front al-Qaeda-led militant and extremist factions backed by the West, as is Idlib. Idlib is predominantly Nusra Front controlled. So if we then follow the funding through, so it goes to the East Aleppo Council. The East Aleppo Council, as I demonstrated in my talk, is made up of a number of terrorist faction leaders. But the East Aleppo Council is also connected in through its leadership to the White Helmets. If you move on the slides, I can sort of explain that a little bit more clearly. So here, for example, you'll see a White Helmet jacket that was found in one of the White Helmet combined with Nusra Front centers in Bab el-Nereb in East Aleppo. And here you'll see clearly the East Aleppo Council logo on the sleeve of that White Helmet jacket. So just to recap, at this point, through questions from Baroness Caroline Cox, we know that the Foreign and Commonwealth, the FCO, has provided almost £200 million in the last 3 years to the euphemistically called Syrian opposition, which has gone through Adam Smith and Integrity to Tamkeen to the East Aleppo Council, which is connected, as you can see very clearly, to the White Helmets. Adam Smith, very quickly, I will be finishing off an article that will be up at 21st Century Wire today. Adam Smith have themselves gone through various corruption cases for having undue influence in the British government to receive funding. Despite these scandals regarding Adam Smith, throughout 2017, they have continued to be financed to receive funds from the FCO. So this has to raise a big question over the legitimacy of those funds and who they're going to, even without the following slides and information.
Well, no problem. So it's been a common theme this week, Vanessa. Don't worry about it.
We've had a lot of dogs barking. Don't worry.
Yeah. So this is on screen at the moment. We've got Raja Dasgupta, who's a former employee of the Department for International Development, according to this. And he obtained confidential files showing where government planned to invest taxpayers' billions in foreign aid projects. He sent the information to his new bosses at Adam Smith International to help them with bids for a slice of lucrative Department for International Development contracts, such as £147 million for Congo. That's quite a statement. That looks like that has come from the Daily Mail. Is that correct?
That's come from the Daily Mail, but it's actually been covered by pretty much across all mainstream media. And this, I think, sort of blew up early. I'm trying to remember my dates now. Either the end of 2016 or early 2017. But then there has been further scandals later on in 2017. So it's ongoing. So here what I've done is to blow up the picture that was on the infograph of the East Aleppo Council. Now, if we look at the guy sat in the middle, he's actually a member of Nour el-Din Zinki, and he was one of the actual torturers and beheaders of the 12-year-old Palestinian child, Abdullah Isa, in July 2016. So this, again, demonstrates, let's remember, East Aleppo Council connected to the White Helmets, going to terrorists. Then again, Abdulaziz Maghribi, who through his own admission in an interview with Al Arabi media, admitted that he was a member of the Al Tawhid Brigade, which was one of the early Qatari-funded Islamic extremist brigades that invaded Aleppo in 2012 and 2013. But here he's seen actually sitting or heading up a group of Ara al-Sham fighters and militants. Ara al-Sham is not officially in the US designated a terrorist group, but I was told yesterday it is actually now a terrorist group in Germany.
Yeah, but this is okay because the BBC uses them for transport and security.
Yeah, yes, exactly. But Ara al-Sham form part of Fatah al-Sham, which is the army of conquest, which comprises Nusra Front, which is Al-Qaeda, and Ara al-Sham. Here again, we see the White Helmets receiving an award from Ara al-Sham. But just to go back to Maghribi for 1 second, he invaded East Aleppo as an armed militant backed by Qatar in 2012. But he was then, according to testimony and civilian testimony in East Aleppo, he then became a leader of Nusra Front. So at the time he was a leader of Nusra Front, he was elected as president of the East Aleppo Council, and he formed the White Helmets. So here again, so if we go back, we have the CSSF fund supplying millions to Adam Smith International, a corrupt intermediary, to Integrity Consulting, to Tamkeen Project, which then hands the finances over to a known terrorist, who then sets up the White Helmets with British UK funding, while still a terrorist. And just to give an example of Arar Sham in East Aleppo, this is the organization that we are effectively funding.
So this is a quick video. What are we looking at here?
Well, these are Arar Sham fighters. This is an Arar Sham video, and this is them preparing either to attack civilians in West Aleppo or to carry out an offensive against the Syrian Arab Army during their operation to liberate these areas from similar terrorists to these. And here we have Essa Jalul. Now, recently, an analyst, the Syrian War Blog, I think it's called, has produced a report showing 65 White Helmet members with allegiances to hardline terrorist organizations. He investigated over 200 accounts, and he said to me, these are the 65 of the most extreme, but all of the others still showed allegiance to various militant organizations inside Syria. The leadership of the White Helmets in Syria has been proven time and time again to be nothing more than terrorists. Essa Jalul is a team leader in Idlib. Here, from his own Facebook page, we've taken posts praising Arar Sham. If you look at the arrows that I've shown, the man in one of his photos is Dr. Zainuddin, who's a notorious extremist, both with Arar Sham and Nusra Front, so with Fatah al-Sham, the Army of Conquest. And here again, you'll see him in a celebration in the Hama countryside, welcoming back the terrorists from Daraya. And if you move on to the video, you will see, guess who else is with these terrorists. So here, with Al-Qaeda and with Arar Sham, with Sheikh Abdullah Muhaizini in the brown headgear here, who trains child suicide bombers inside Syria. He's Riyadh educated and funded. He has publicly called for funds to be sent to the militant and terrorist organizations. And here he is mingling quite happily with the White Helmet operatives. So, you know, it's hard to really understand what more evidence does there need to be to at least carry out an investigation into this organization?
Well, look, let's just briefly have a look at the sort of response that you've been getting on Twitter and so on since you spoke. And every single comment that I've seen, I have yet to see one that actually attacked what you've said. They're all attempting to attack you personally. So here's one. She'd fail the written test as the places I've worked, as her writing is peppered with linguistic errors. She might explain her hatred this might explain her hatred towards the MSF. It's quite amusing that he's complaining about your writing being peppered with linguistic errors, and his tweet has a linguistic error because he says she'd failed the written test as the places I've worked as her writing is. This doesn't make sense.
No, well, even when you were reading it, it didn't make sense.
Right.
I mean, you know, I don't know who this Tom Burgess Watson is, but it seems to be that he's just a media attack dog that they've set on to people on Twitter, because he's still going. I mean, he's been going for about 12 hours. I gave up in the end. I blocked him because he was just ridiculous. But no, he's not once responded to any requests for his response to the White Helmet evidence. But nobody has. None of the journalists did in Geneva, and in their reports since the Geneva conference, not one of them has actually addressed the accusation.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we can help out, or at least our audience today can help out, Vanessa, because somebody says that particular gentleman specialises in reports from Parisian nightclubs.
Yes.
So there we are.
Okay, well, let's look at the response to the response. So this is from Carmen Ranieri, who says, well, we're not allowed to express our doubts regarding the mainstream media narrative without being brand marked as sadists. People are tired of waiting 10 years or more until new journalists come up with the truth about wars, like in the case of Iraq, etc. So we started doing your job.
I mean, Carmen, actually, I have to say, Carmen and many others do such a fantastic job on helping myself and Ava Bartlett and so on with research behind the scenes. So a huge thank you to these people. But I have to also say that people like Carmen Ranieri, she's quite right. They are far better informed. They are far more principled. And they are far better investigative analysts than any of the journalists that are out there right now receiving three-figure salaries.
Yes, absolutely.